And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome aboard. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service in Alaska region, and this is your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Saturday, November 23rd, 2024. And we start out with the sea ice. The ice is growing and expanding throughout the north along the Arctic coast and in through the Chukchi Sea. We did have a rather stormy period. And once again, we have a frontal system that's going to be pushing in, initially trying to bring winds in from the southwest, but then as the system works its way, low pressure is going to pass south of St. Lawrence Island early mid-afternoon on Sunday and then come across Norton Sound and push into the western interior prior to daybreak on Monday morning. So the circulation around the low eventually have more northeast winds turning northerly, and that's going to draw down some more cold air here along the west side of the state through the Bering Strait. So we do expect ice to be building and expanding southward as we go through next week leading up to Thanksgiving. So here is the low as of we expect late this Saturday night, early Sunday morning. The low will then continue working its way eastward. We have a weak secondary low over the western Gulf and then fairly strong high pressure over the Yukon, Northwest Territories around 1040 millibars. That high will begin heading southeastward and filling a bit. Will not have quite as strong of the offshore or outflow winds there across the panhandle as we go into Sunday and Monday. Things will be settling down there. So the low by early mid-afternoon Sunday will be just south of St. Lawrence Island, with the occluded front pushing inland with areas of light to moderate snow and then maybe a little light mix of a little freezing rain, sleet, or just plain old rain, especially down here through the lower Yukon, Kuskokwim deltas. Temperatures are going to be rising a couple few degrees above freezing. And into Monday, this system will continue eastward, and that'll spread areas of accumulating snow through the central eastern interior, Alaska Range, spilling over into areas of the Mat-Su Valley and including maybe the Anchorage Bowl, seeing at least maybe 2 to 4 inches of snow with that if things come together. As this low heads southeastward and takes some moisture with it, the air over the panhandle is quite dry and cold, and that will likely lead to a round of potentially some heavier snowfall late Monday night through Tuesday into Tuesday evening through the icy Strait corridor, Gustavus, Hoonah, on over toward Juneau. Some areas could receive anywhere from 2 to as much as 10 inches of snow a little higher up in elevation. So here are the way things are looking for the marine concerns on Sunday. For the inner channels, winds northerly, 15, 20 knots, common maybe as high as 25 knots, Stevens Passage. Waves generally running around 4 feet. Now for the outer nearshore waters on the Gulf Coast, winds will be out of the northeast from Sitka southward, 15 to 20 knots. As we get up toward Yakutat Bay and Cape Suckling, easterly winds to 10 knots. Waves generally 3-4 feet. On Monday, we expect northwest winds through the inner channels at 10 knots. Waves a couple of feet there, but for the outer coast, winds will at least momentarily turn southerly ahead of that low that's drifting southeastward. So 10 to 15 knot winds Sitka down to off of Craig for 3-4 foot waves, and then more easterly winds out of the icy Strait area on up toward Yakutat Bay, 15 knots with 4 foot waves. Now we have a ridge of high pressure that's going to begin to break down. It's already in that process, but as it folds over to the south and east, it's going to allow for Sunday to be relatively light winds, Cook Inlet and across Prince William Sound, variable winds only around 10 knots with waves running a couple feet at best. As we get into Monday, we'll see those winds pick up again as this front is crossing through the Alaska Range. Will turn the flow more westerly, and we could see winds west-northwest to 30 knots, lower Cook Inlet to northeast of Kodiak Island with 7 to 8 foot waves. Still northeast winds about 15 knots here within Prince William Sound with waves a couple of feet, but obviously we have a weak low in this region, so that's part of the circulation outside of Hinchinbrook entrance. We're looking at east to north winds there within that corner of the Gulf with waves running about 4 feet. Now for the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, especially from Shelikof Strait down across the peninsula, winds will generally be southwesterly 15 to 20 knots, waves 4 or 5 feet on the North Pacific side, maybe 2 feet within Bristol Bay to 3-4 feet north of Cold Bay for Monday. Winds will be generally more westerly in the northern portion of the peninsula and around Kodiak Island, upwards of 20 knots around Kodiak Island with waves 6 feet within Shelikof Strait. Winds kind of turn more south and then easterly here as we get down toward Cold Bay and False Pass. Waves generally 3 to 6 feet in the North Pacific and 4 to maybe 5 feet there across areas of the Bering side. Now, for the Aleutians on Sunday, winds south-southeast 20 knots over the eastern Aleutians. They'll turn back to the northeast, Atka through Adak and west toward Kiska, and then more easterly toward Shemya, but not especially strong. Those winds will increase, though. There is a front coming in from the north, and that's going to shift winds more northeasterly. So across much of the Aleutians, winds will generally be northeasterly around 30 knots on Monday. Highest waves will be north of Adak and northeast of Kiska, where winds could be as high as 40 knots out toward Shemya, with waves running in this area of 15 to 19 feet. Now, along the southwest coast up through Norton Sound on Sunday, winds will generally be southerly. We have the low passing just south of St. Lawrence Island Sunday early afternoon. And as it does so, there's this occluded front that kind of extends like this. So ahead of it, winds flow is south-southwest, generally 15 to 20 knots into Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay along the lower Yukon Delta, and into Norton Sound. Waves generally 3-4 feet. Winds turn westerly toward the Pribilofs, strongest around St. Matthew with 10-foot waves there. But in the wake of the system, once the low moves inland and into the interior, winds are going to turn more toward the north and pick up. So on Monday, we expect north-northwest winds 25 knots here in that wider expanse of Norton Sound to along the lower Yukon coastline and north side of Nunavik Island, as high as 35 knots from the northeast, the Pribilovs and St. Matthew, where waves could be anywhere from 9 to as high as 13 feet. But along the immediate coast, generally 5 to 7 foot waves. Now, as the low passes through Norton Sound Sunday later afternoon, evening, and the nighttime, northeast winds will set up through the Bering Strait around 25 knots, more northerly to 30 knots on the west side of St. Lawrence Island. Waves through the strait where you have open water, 4 or 5 feet, as high as 9 feet there. Gamble. Off of Cape Lisburne, northeast winds to 30 knots as we ride up along the Arctic coast, the Beaufort Sea coastline. Northeast to east winds 10 to 15 knots with a lot of ice in place now across there. Now come Monday, we're looking at northwest to west winds 15 to 20 knots, Utqiagvik through Kaktovik. North winds through the lower Chukchi Sea from 20 picking up to 30 to 35 knots through the Bering Strait to along the west side of the Seward Peninsula, where waves could run as high as 9 to 12 feet where we have open water, and that would extend down to the north side of St. Lawrence there in the vicinity of Savunga on Monday.